All right, this is a question that could be on the SSAT, and it basically has to do with percents and ratios and all that. Okay, so if you're like most people, you're going to read this and try to solve it one way. And it says 20% of 75 is 5% of one number. Of what number? So like I said, if you're like most people, you're probably going to try to find out what 20% of 75 actually is. So let's do that. Well, what's 20%, right? Percent, as you should know, means out of 100 cent. How many cents are there in a dollar? There's 100. This means per 100. It's one way to look at this. And when you find out what that is, it's 20 out of 100 is all it really means. If you know your decimals pretty good, then this is the same thing as 0.2, right? To simplify this, well, 20 out of 100, how many 20s go into 100? Well, it's 5, right? So this is also the same thing as 1/5. That's what 1/5 equals 0.2, 20 out of 100. They're all the same thing. In order to find out what 20% of 75 is, you just multiply one of these, any of these, by 75. 75 times 0.2, 75 times 20 divided by 100, or 75 times 1/5 are all the same thing. They all basically just mean 75 over 5. And what does that equal? It equals 15. So 20% of 75, or 1/5 of 75, or 0.2 of 75 is 15. So the other part of the question is, okay, well, that 15, right? That 15 is 5% of what number? What number? Okay, so, well, what's 5%? 5%. Well, 5%, like we said, is 5 out of 100, right? And we'll just call what number? We'll call that x, right? 15 is equal to 5 1/100ths of x. Now, I don't want to multiply both sides by 100 and then divide out the 5. I'm not looking to do that because I know that I can simplify this fraction. And let me just do that right here. So 5 out of 100, well, how many times does 5 go into 100? It goes in 20 times. How many times does 5 go into 5? It goes in 1 time. So 1/20th is the same thing as 5 out of 100. And also written as a decimal, I don't have to figure this out too hard. I just know in the two places that make up the hundredths place, right? This is the 10th place. This is the 100th place, right? It becomes 0.05. So that's what the decimal would be. And I can multiply that. So I have 15 equals 1/20th of x. And I multiply both sides by 20. Let's see what happens. Well, I multiply this side by 20. And I multiply this side by 20. Well, these 20s are going to cancel out, right? Because it's going to be 20 over 20, which equals 1. Now, 20 times 15, well, that's the same thing as 2 times 15, which is 30, times another 10, which adds another 0 onto it. So 300 is equal to x. And that's it. So x is equal to 300. That's one way to do it. I want to show you another way because I think it's a lot easier to look at it this way. And we'll see what you think. So I'm going to write it again. 20% of 75 equals 5% of what number? Right? Okay, well, let's look at it this way. 20%, well, that's 5% 4 times, right? Times 4. So 5% times 4 of 75 equals 5% of what? Well, you know, this is just saying 5% of this thing. Actually, let me do that, and let me do that in a different color here. 5% of the, oh, that's not a good color, of this thing right here is equal to 5% of this thing. And remember, we said of what will be x. So x is just equal to this stuff. In other words, 75 times 4. 75 times 4. Well, 75 times 4, that's, I could do it a couple ways. That's 75 plus 75 makes up $1.50, right? And that's $2.75, so I double that, and I get 300. I still get x is equal to 300, either way.